Hello lads. So the last video I put up was Absent Evolution, and it caught the eye of Loose Goose Gaming, who likes the modern content. So today I'm returning to modern with Boros Burn. A bit of the history of Burn is it really started as red deck wins back in Extended in the mid 90s, late 90s. And since then it's evolved into this red-white shell, and it hasn't changed much over the last 10 years or so, since Khans, really. Khans was the previous major edition of the Monastery Swiftspear. The last major edition was from Modern Horizons 2 with Sunbaked Canyon. So if you buy into Burn, if you want to play Modern, Burn hardly ever changes. It just uses the most efficient red creatures and red burn spells possible to do the deceptively simple task of burning out your opponent. The strategy is linear. The strategy is very simple, very basic. The tactics are not. So for example, this friend of mine that I play EDH with, sometimes I take my modern decks out to him so we can play something different. I also take my vintage decks too, but lately I've been taking modern, so we try something else. So Monastery Swiftspear, 1 red for a 1/2 hasty prowess. Him being an EDH player, he sometimes gets tripped up over when he should attack with it and when he should cast spells, because he knows it's better to cast spells during your second main phase. But with Swiftspear, if you have sorceries, it's better to cast them during your first main phase and during combat in order to trigger the prowess. Rift Bolt, this is another one that when I teach new players how to play, the suspend, because they lock into the 2 colorless 1 red. They don't realize this actually costs 1 red in 1 turn. So there are 4 of those, 4 Swiftspears, Eidolon and the Great Revel. Another card, and I must admit I fell prey to this myself. Okay, why the hell am I going to cast this in a deck full of things that cost 3 or less? This is going to hurt me really bad. But in practice, it hurts your opponent a lot worse. Plus, it puts the brakes on them. If you burn them down to about 8, 7, then they start really thinking about, do they want to crack a fetch? Do they want to play that cheap spell? No, they probably don't, because once they get down to 6, that's 2 bolt range. Against Burn, if your opponent is at 6 life, you pretty much have them. Not always. Sometimes the deck doesn't give you a good top deck. So, Bloodstained Mire in here to efficiently find mountains and or Sacred Foundries. Of course, only the mountain side is relevant. The deck is only red and white. There is no black in the deck. Sunbaked Canyon. So when you're low on gas and you need a top deck, you can crack this. I'm only running 3. Rift Bolt. Another Sunbaked Canyon, another Rift Bolt. Light Up the Stage. I really do need to get set copies of Light Up the Stage, because something that happens with newer players is they don't understand Spectacle. It's not explained. That's why I like, for example, the Rift Bolt. So when I'm teaching a new player, after a certain point, I don't like to look at their hands, and I like to have them read the cards, and I explain to them where they can find what the card is telling them. So suspend 1. Rather than cast a spell from your hand, you can pay 1 to exile a time counter. Beginning your upkeep, remove the time counter, and then you can cast it without paying its mana cost. Light Up the Stage, because Spectacle is not explained. They don't always understand that there's something else they can do, because they don't lock into it has this ability. They just understand, okay, there's 2 colors and a red, exile the top 2. So I like this version better. I like the way this card looks, but I'll probably be replacing it with proper set foils in order to be nicer to players that don't understand as many of the keywords as I do, don't memorize them. Goblin Guide. Deck uses 4 of these. This is my favorite art. Ever since I saw this, I thought, wow, That's hilarious. I want 4 of those. But at the time, I think it was 30, 40 euros. So lately, Goblin Guide, and this is another reason why Burn is so easy to get into now. Goblin Guide is cheap. Eidolon is cheap. Eidolon has gone down from, I think at one time the flat ones were 15 euros. Now they're 3. Foils were 25. Now they're 10, I think, 12. So I want to get 4 foil Eidolons, but with everything else I'm trying to do, I just haven't gotten around to it. Skewer the Critics. So here Spectacle is explained. You may cast this spell for its spectacle cost, rather its mana cost, and opponent lost life this turn. But if a newer player has Light Up the Stage and hasn't seen Skewer the Critics, it doesn't have one in their hand to compare it to, again, it doesn't help that much. And this is another card I would like to foil, but the foils for Burn are bloody expensive. Mountain, I just like that art. Rob Alexander's always has done great landscapes. Beautiful mountain. Another Goblin Guide. Okay, now we're getting into the Boros part. Pretty much just the red-white is for Lightning Helix and Boros Charm. And then the sideboard. So Lightning Helix Horse, red-white, blast something for 3, you gain 3 life. It's a lightning bolt and a healing salve. Well, kind of healing salve all in one. Lightning Bolt. I've got this Mystic Archive version. Again, they were surprisingly cheap. Wizards printed the hell out of these, so not that much. Arid Mesa. So this is one of the more expensive cards in the deck. I think these were 15 euro when I bought the set. But all in all, you can stack up Burn for not that much mana. You can get the not cons. MH2 Arid Mesas, and I don't think they're that much. Sacred Foundry, of course, we're looking at Ravnica Remastery coming down the pipeline in a week or 2. Meaning Sacred Foundry is going to be cheap. You can get the most undesirable version of the card, the latest non-Ravnica Remastered printing, for probably 5-7 euros pretty soon. Another Lightning Helix, Monastery Swiftspear, another Eidolon, another Arid Mesa, another Lightning Bolt, Lightning Helix. So the strategy, like I said, is simple. Burn your opponent. Get him to 0. The tactics, as I was alluding to before, are more complex. So let's say your opponent is down to 7 life, and they have a creature that's screwing with you. They've got something, I don't know. I don't know the meta that well. I guess the Bowmasters. And it's pinging you, and you've got an Eidolon. So you don't want to get pinged too much further, because you're taking damage too. You're taking damage in the Eidolon if you have it. And you draw a Lightning Helix. Okay, do you blast Bowmasters, or do you blast your opponent? Is the creature that your opponent has such a problem that you have to get rid of it? Or is it better to burn them to kill them and end the problem with the creature by default? Same thing with fetches and shocklands. So I've been teaching my friend as we play. Sometimes if you have 1 white available, typically every time thereafter you fetch, you just want to get a basic mountain. The deck doesn't need that much white, so as long as you have 1, you don't need to fetch for a shockland. In most modern decks, typically you do want to fetch for a shockland. So it's a question of when to do that. The question of when to attack for this is pretty much always. Unless, of course, your opponent has something that you want to throw them into the way as a chump blocker. Clifftop Retreat. So, what are they from? Not Amonkhet. The Indian set. what is the Indian set called? Where Sahili came from? Ixalan, not Ixalan, Jesus Christ, I can't remember the name of the damn set. The one with the masterpieces he mentions. Anyway, that set has these lands where, as long as you control 2 or fewer lands, it comes into play untapped. If you control 2 or more lands, they come into play tapped. Everybody seems to be using them all across the meta in everything, but I don't really like them. I don't like the swingy nature of them coming into play tapped, and so I don't use them. Plus, they're expensive. They're still expensive. Some of them are beautiful, and instead I just have Clifftop Retreat. Yeah, it might enter the battlefield tapped, but odds are in this 2-color deck, no. Typically only if it's the first land you have and you only have one, which is a kind of a bad idea to get started in burn for the first turn. But not always. Sometimes one land hand in burn is just fine. If you've got one land that comes into play untapped, and you've got lava spikes, lightning bolts, goblin guides, and Monastery Swiftspears, just go to town. Play it and burn your opponent. There's a lava spike right there. It's kind of funny. So a friend of mine, he had 4 signed lava spikes. He had 4 foil lava spikes. And I said, you know, you can only use 1 set in your decks. I need some lava spikes. I'll buy a set off you. And he took a week to figure out if he wanted to let go of the foil or the signed. Which one is more special? So obviously he made his choice. He kept the foils. I got the signed ones. Arid Mesa. Grim Lavamancer. So he has been out of burn for a while. He's not really represented anymore. I like him for multiple reasons. One, it's a throwback to when I was playing Red Deck Wins and Extended. 2, it for new players, especially people that play EDH, it offers a new dimension of the game. So 1 for a 1/1 red wizard, and this red remove 2 cards in your graveyard from the game. It deals 2 damage. So hence all the fetch lands, just like with the Red Deck Wins. One game, my friend, he'd only played the burn deck 2 or 3 times, so he had Grim Lavamancer on board, ready to go. I had not been able to kill it, or I had decided not to kill it because I wanted to give him the chance to use it. And he had a burn spell in his hand and something else. Yeah, it was Boros Charm. And I was at 6 life. So he's thinking, okay, I don't think I think that's game, because if he could not survive another attack. I forget what I was playing, but whatever I attacked him with, he could not survive it. It was do or die. And one of our fellow players was looking at his hands and said, no, you've got him. You have him on, he's dead. I don't see it, man. I don't see it. So cast Boros Charm, deal 4 damage to target player, putting me at 2, and then Grim Lavamancer me for the other 2. And when he realized this, when he realized how this works, and that it works so well, I think the other thing is Eidolon was in play. So I believe he went down to 1 life of the charm, and that's why he thought he could not kill me, because he couldn't cast anything else. And that's why Grim Lavamancer was key. It's something like that. But it was just the tactics. Okay, the objective is simple. Kill my opponent by burning him out. The tactical maneuvers required to do that, that is where it gets tricky. There's only 1 basic plains in the deck, so if you need a plains, you can fetch for it without taking 2 by putting into play an untapped Sacred Foundry. So this is my Boros Burn deck. Now, even though it's part of my suite of obsolete decks. I could take this to a tournament today, and I would probably do halfway decent. Most of my losses would probably be due to misplays, just from not being in practice. But it's pretty much the same burn deck. Now, the sideboard is tuned for the ecosystem that the deck finds itself in. It's not the sideboard I would take to a tournament. If I went to a tournament, I would study the meta and sideboard accordingly. So for me, I've got 3 Anger the Gods. Helps against Soul Sisters and helps against Troll Worship. So Troll Worship, all the creatures for the most part have hexproof. Anger the Gods doesn't care about hexproof. It says, you angered the gods, your creatures die. They can be regenerated, so he can regenerate some of his trolls, but he won't have enough mana to regenerate all of them. There's 2 light up stage in the deck, so I've got 2 more just to... sometimes you want 3, sometimes you only need 1. It provides more flexibility. Skullcrack. So this is really against Soul Sisters. Soul Sisters gives this burn deck fits sometimes. And eventually I'll get to Soul Sisters and explain it. So players can't gain life this turn. Damage can't be prevented this turn. 3 damage target player. So if they're, say, going to crack a Martyr of Life and gain a bunch of life, you just hit them with this. Not only can they not gain life, damage can't be prevented to any of their creatures, and they get hit for a bolt. Smash the Smithereens. This isn't really in against any one thing. Probably against Merfolk and General Domain Merfolk. Of course, it'll hit Ether Vial. General Domain will hit Draco, because otherwise Burn just... it can't really do anything about Draco. His name isn't Draco. Sign of Draco. So Sign of Draco being a 4/4, okay, you have to waste 2 bolts on it. Or you're going to hit with Smash Smithereens, and you get to bolt the controller of Sign of Draco. Disenchant. A lot of you are probably surprised to see Disenchant in the sideboard. This is really against Troll Worship. If Troll Worship resolves a worship, Burn just falls flat. You can't kill them. You've got nothing else in there. You've got no way to get rid of the worship. And that's kind of it. This bit of the history of the Burn, just to recap. Started as Red Deck Wins back in Extended. Evolved from there. Sometime in the mid-2000s, it became this Boros Burn red-white monstrosity, and pretty much stayed that way. It's this deck, except for Sunbaked Canyon and Light Up the Stage, Skewer the Critics, is... when was... 24